Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now, on to the show.
What I want to go back and talk to you about a little bit is set the scene. And you've probably all heard of VUCA. Obviously, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And you also probably know that it's something that was, I think, first sort of came onto the world stage in the late 80s, which came out of, if I remember right, the United States military. Now, a lot of people talk about this, and the problem with VUCA is, it's like, what do you do? This is chaos, absolute chaos. So where do I go? What do I do? You know, how do I predict what's coming down the line? I mean, can anybody predict the future? But what we do within L'Oreal with what we call flipped VUCA, and it helps us navigate through this ever-changing, chaotic world where we live today. And believe it or not, it's with VUCA. And for VUCA, what we do is we've flipped those, and some of you may have seen this, we've flipped what VUCA means to being vision. You need the vision to know where you're going to go. You need to understand the context of where you're working or operating, and in our case, to understand people, the company culture, the dynamics of an organization. You also have clarity of where you're going. You need to be able to see the path in front of you and how you're going to get there and where it's taking you. But you need to be agile enough to deviate, to modify, depending on what's coming from around you. And I often use the expression, which came from a very dear friend of mine, a lady called Kathy Seabrook, called True North. And True North is good. You know where you're going, you know where your path is taking you. But from time to time, you need to deviate. So instead of going in this straight direction, maybe all of a sudden you go this way, and you thought you were going to the North Pole, but all of a sudden you found yourself in Switzerland or in Germany. And then you need to do a True North test and find, okay, how do I get myself back online? Am I going in the right direction? Maybe a little bit off tangent, but am I going in the right direction? But turn the ship a bit to make sure that I'm still going true north. And Jamie, this is, I think, where I want you to come in. Are you still there?
I am.
Right. Can you count to 10 with 1 second intervals, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
In those 10 seconds, one person somewhere in the world has been killed, has died because they went to work. There are approximately 3 million people that die every single year, according to the ILO, and it's probably an underestimation because they went to work. Now, that is a mix, obviously, of ill health and actually safety accidents. And it's a big, big figure, but it's also something that we should never forget and lose focus with everything that's coming to us from left, right, and center in the world, is the fact that we all work in industries whereby probably somebody could lose their life because they came to work. And the way we look at that in L'Oreal is to say that is our most important aspect. A small first aid case with no other serious potential, should it be treated the same as a potential fatality? Shouldn't really we be spending our time looking for those areas whereby people are going to die, we're going to kill somebody at work? So going back to L'Oreal now, so what we've done is we've tried to put people into the center of what we do. And we've had several strategies over the last 10 years. We basically have, we develop a new strategy about every 5 years, but the true north remains always the same. And in that, we're not talking about things like zero harm or anything like that. We're talking about a culture of care. We're not actually talking about a safety culture. I mean, a safety culture for us, or a culture of any kind, rests within a business culture, right? The culture can be different depending on the organization, the location of the organization, and can even vary from a north of a particular country to the south of a country. But what we do know is that people are our sense of purpose, and that they are our greatest strength, and that without our people, there is no L'Oreal. There is no L'Oreal at all. The rest of it is just bricks and mortar and steel machinery. Our people are our sense of purpose and our greatest strength. But behind that, we need to have a strategy, okay? And like I said, we've had strategies in place, developed and evolved every 5 years since about 2010. But we've kept with one consistent approach within that strategy, which is risk management, drive towards excellence, and what we can do beyond. And that we're going to mention a bit later, but that is absolutely vital. And it gives us that consistency of where we're driving. And it's also what I've learned from the previous 5 or 6 corporate environmental health and safety positions that I've held. I've had a similar approach of a consistent strategy, a consistent vision with fundamental pillars, risk management, excellence, and beyond here, that don't actually change. Back in 2021, 2022, we decided to look at our new strategy, our strategy to take us to 2030, but we wanted to change it. We wanted this to be a strategy of the people, by the people. And to that extent, we interviewed people at all levels within the organization based on their expectations, what they thought about safety, health and well-being, what they thought was important. In addition, we interviewed externally approximately, I would say, about 50 or 60 of my equivalents, you could say, in other organizations, to ask them, what do you think about L'Oreal? Where do you think our weaknesses are? What do you think for you is on the horizon over the next 5 to 10 years that maybe could be something for us? We brought all that together and we identified areas, what we called of improvement or of in focus going forward from our previous strategy. So our previous strategy did not evolve, change too much. It just became more focused in certain areas, okay? And some of those I'm going to touch on a little bit later. But what's important is I have never worked on safety culture or a health and safety culture or whatever you want to call it. I'm a firm believer that you need to take an individual like you, like me, on a journey so that we can see risk for ourselves. We can see the risk, we can react to the risk, and maybe even mitigate the risk. Because at the end of the day, you nor your management can be on the line all of the time out on the shop floor, helping people to stay safe. And the fact that humans, we are designed to make mistakes. It's part of the way we're wired, okay? For anybody that's got into the psychology of the brain, the way the brain works, and it takes shortcuts or cognitive bias. And it's important to know that people will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. So what we need to do is to rewire people in order for them to be able to see risk around them and react accordingly. So what we've really developed in L'Oreal is an approach of a risk-searching culture. And the first aspect of that, one of the main pillars, surprise, surprise, is risk management, okay? I mean, straight up front, it is our foundation. And it starts with a number of processes. We have a particular program called LIFE, and it's an acronym for Life-Changing Incident or Fatality Event. Some of you may know it as SIF. The only thing that I found in most companies, when you're talking to the senior managers, everybody's always say, what's SIF? What's a SIF? When you call your program life or something equivalent, then it has meaning, right? Because life is life. And it starts with a top-down program, which is basically designing out by engineering controls, hierarchy of controls, those risks. So it's not like saying, I have a life-saving rules like some organizations have, that says, oh, we have a permit, or that's the kind of behavior that we're expecting. Honestly, that's not what we should be doing. We should be able to turn around and say, we have a potential problem with people working on the roof for fall from height. We will actually close off the roof. We will put fences or whatever you want to call them around the roof. We have a problem with sky domes. We're going to put netting, or we're going to put metal grills underneath. That's what we should be doing, not saying, we've got a permit, for example. So our risk management program, the first one is life, and that has approximately 270 top-down engineering solutions to places where people could die. Either we've had accidents in L'Oreal, or we learn from the accidents in other companies. In L'Oreal, we do a lot of benchmarking, networking with other companies, which is extremely important because that we can learn about accidents and their accidents, the things that go wrong in other organizations, and look, is it relevant to us? Okay, so risk management is important. And then after that, we have a program called GAP, which is Global Hazard Assessment Procedure, but it's very different. It is a manager, senior mancom level tool, and they can ask 3 questions. Question 1, how am I going to kill somebody in my team? Question 2, how am I going to give somebody an irreversible injury in my team? Question 3, how is somebody going to have in 15 to 20 years a terminal illness because he worked for me? And the idea is using that brainstorming with the senior management, they identified those areas whereby they can have a very, very serious accident. And then they have to put in solutions in order to resolve it. Now, what they also do is they go out on site and ask the same question to the teams, to the operators, the associates, the technicians, the lab people. And though it starts off being a bit of a shock, it actually quite works. And it raises the awareness. And people realize, oh, you know, I can die at work. And honestly, it does have an impact. The second thing that's important that I want to share with you, that is something that I absolutely believe in, is the idea of visible felt leadership. Now, we believe in L'Oreal that every single employee can be a leader. You have leaders that work as associates, as operators, that may be a leader in the local community. And somehow within our safety program, we aim at the end of the day to try and find out the way to bring out the leader in everybody with respect to health, safety, and well-being. But the visible felt leadership, the programs that we have, are all about aligning the line management, getting them talking the same languages, walking out on the shop floor and asking open questions to people within their teams on how they could possibly be injured, and working with them and talking with them to identify solutions of what we can do. But the power of this program that was developed in-house is that the manager, the direct manager of the employee, is now responsible for closing that action item. Visible felt leadership. The leadership of the manager is felt by the employee because he does actions, he gets things done. And it reminds me of something my dad once used to always tell me, and maybe that's had an influence here. He always told me if it's important for the boss, it's important for him, or it's important for me. And I think that comes through here. But that's an extremely powerful tool. And the program that we have is called Measure. It's in-house built, and it does exactly that. But it also has the line management talking the same language. It has them closing out and working with their teams in order to close out action items. And at corporate level, I track that. I track the number of visits that are done every month, the number of action items that are identified, and the number of action items that are closed. And every single manager worldwide within L'Oreal has an objective to close 90% of those action items in a year. The other thing that's important that I want to share with you, and this is not going to surprise you, is employee involvement. But the question is, how do you put in place your strategy? How do you drive employee involvement at the right pace? So whenever we take a program like the program I just described, Measure, or another program, we look at it and we ask ourselves the question, what is the role of management? And what is the visible felt leadership within that as we're designing it? We then also ask the question, how do we want to involve employees? And how do we want to involve the EH&S community, the EH&S professionals at site level? And what are the KPIs that will drive this to success? And for a key program, as soon as we identify the KPIs, they are actually monitored at corporate level, because we believe that the processes, these programs that we have in place drive our performance. It's not the performance that drives us. We drive these tools. And it becomes just part of the way that we work. For example, if you take the risk assessments, going back to the risk assessment part, we require every single manager to drive his risk assessments with his teams, which probably most of you do. However, we require a certain percentage of employees to be involved with risk assessments at all times. And what we're trying to do there is educate, teach the managers and the employees to see risk, not just to follow rules, but to see the risks, so therefore they understand and they're involved in the development of the rules locally in order to do that. All our programs are done like that. Then we have governance. Governance is vital if we're going to drive things. I've had experience of where you back off on governance, you trust people to do the right thing at the right time, and you trust people to follow the rules. The reality of it is, being human, is we deviate. We deviate because it's either quicker or it's convenient or it's not as difficult to do or whatever. And if that we allow the deviation and that becomes the standard, then the next deviation will deviate even more. So governance is important at multiple levels. It could be simple checklists, inspections at a site level, through to the corporate governance audits whereby we assess the culture of our sites, which is done by our own EH&S senior leadership team. Or it could be the implementation of live through our EH&S risk audit, which is done with a mix between external and internal people at the moment. But governance is vital. And my experience of across all the countries where I've been is, without that, deviation will happen because it's human nature. And when deviation happens, there is that potential to have an accident. People might make mistakes. And if behind it is that kind of situation where we could have a fatality, then it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So what we do in L'Oréal is we have an approach of the right tool at the right time. What I found over the years, and what we found in L'Oréal, is that depending on the maturity level of a site in its journey, and we do culture audits, as I said, we put them on the Bradley curve. We have a hybrid version, a L'Oréal version of the Bradley curve, to see where they fit in. But depending on where they are on that journey, will determine what kind of health and safety tool or methodology they should be putting in place. There's the risk part to start off with, but as we get more advanced on EH&S, health and safety starts to be driven by my line manager, starts to be driven by the operators. It's just it's the way we are. As you get to the end, you can't put in tools that are advanced if your culture isn't ready. And you've also got to realize that at times, when you change your senior management or even a site manager, then the culture can change as well because of this influence of the boss. So it's quite all right on that culture journey for you to go backwards and forwards and to hover. It's not always an improvement. But what is important is that you choose the right tool at the right time in that culture journey, but in the right hands. In the right hands, which means, is it the management that are leading it? And at times it should be. Is it the EH&S that are leading it? And maybe at times it is the EH&S, the health and safety professional, that should be leading it because of their expertise. And when should it be driven by the associates, the technicians? And it's very, very important. And one of the things that I see a lot is people driving programs in place, some of them off the shelf, that the organization is not ready for it. They should be focusing on the risk management, not killing people, not having the serious injuries, but all of a sudden they want to work on advanced culture tools. Our role as a professional is to stop that. Our role as a professional is to identify the right tool at the right time and not necessarily always be starstruck by those things that are coming out of research without any background or being pushed through as being good tools that'll drive a certain aspect that you've got no clue whether it'll work or not or whether your organization is ready for it. What I would suggest in those situations is you do a pilot over several months, maybe even longer. I mean, when we piloted Mesure, it was done over approximately a year and a half, and it was quite a long time until we got it right and we knew it was the right thing for us to do. More context. Now, Jamie, I'm not going to get you to count to 125 million, okay? But this is the number of people that die unnecessarily every year at home. Every single year. This is not just natural death. This is not natural death. There's 125 million people that die every year. And this is probably an underestimation as well. And what we've identified in L'Oreal is that maybe we should try and make a difference here. Is there a way that we can make a difference? So we started looking at how we could export our culture into other organizations, into local communities, and above all, our families. Because if we can save just one single life somewhere in the world, then it's worth it. And believe it or not, it doesn't cost a lot of money to actually develop more of a social aspect to health and safety. We came up with a program called Safe at Work, Safe at Home, involving our employees going beyond the workplace. And when you involve your employees in community work around health and safety, trying to give back, or you involve them by giving them fire extinguishers to take home, which then promotes a discussion with the family, or even first aid box or anything like that, you're actually exporting the culture and you could just save a life. When we offer people first aid training, and when we first did it a few times, I remember where I'm based, there weren't a lot of people enrolled, and it was for free. It was just first aid training. We changed our conversation, and we turned around to people and we said, we don't want you to be in a situation where a loved one is choking or is about to die, and you stand there hopeless. Can't do anything. You can't help except for dial 911 or whatever your local emergency services number is. And that we want you to give you a life gift of first aid, training in first aid, and we're going to include baby first aid, because you probably know baby first aid, normal first aid is not the same thing for any of you that are first aiders. And it changes the dialogue. At the end of our training, when we're talking about work at height training, electrical training at work, and at home. And it makes a click. It starts to make people a little bit prouder about working for a company that wants to have an impact outside and within their families. What we did, we then started going into schools and things like that, and we go into townships. We've done this in Brazil, India, Indonesia, and China. And we go into townships and we take education about health and safety to children, the parents, and also the school teachers. Just hoping just to make a little difference. It's all about hearts and minds. But the people in the white shirts that you see there are all L'Oreal employees. You cannot imagine how proud they are to be part of this, to go out into schools, see the children smile, and actually thinking, maybe, just maybe, we made a difference today. You cannot imagine how the change in the mindset of the employees about the way they see risk and the way they see safety at work, how it changes. This is still under construction. We've done several countries, but it's not everywhere in the world. But it is an amazing game changer when it comes to giving back and honestly making a difference within society and making your employees proud to work for a company that simply wants to give. These are what we've done over the last 2 years, and some of the schools we've been to. You can see the interaction, but we also have family days, right? Typically, we celebrate around the World Health and Safety Day, which is about the 20th of April, if I remember right. Okay, it's only 10 schools. It's only 4,000 families, but every little bit counts. And there's probably those that know me, I have an approach which is called the hummingbird. And well, I'm getting a bit emotional on this one because it really gets me. But the thing about the hummingbird is quite simple. Every single little act that a person does in L'Oreal or outside, an act of kindness, an act of picking up a piece of paper off the floor, just doing something could make a difference. If we all do that, or every single one of you, plus every single one of the 88,000 employees in L'Oreal did one single thing every day, that's a big difference. And that's what we call within L'Oreal the hummingbird effect. And it's very, very important that we realize that no matter how small our contribution, we can contribute and we just might be able to save a life. We may never know, though. And this comes full circle to our sense of purpose. Our sense of purpose, and it is not to work safely for L'Oreal. I do not want anybody to only want to work safely for L'Oreal. Not a single employee. I want people to understand that their sense of purpose is to go back safely to their families. And that in some countries, in some regions, that individual is probably the major income earner, could be, for the family. The impact of the family of somebody going home and leaving work in a coffin is unimaginable. Our sense of purpose is so that we can spend our time with our families or doing the things that we love doing at the weekends, in the evenings, whatever that may be. And when you can get an employee to realize where their sense of purpose is, they have less resistance to the rules. They may better understand that the rules are in place for certain reasons, because their sense of purpose is now evident that it actually is not L'Oreal. It is actually they come to work for their families or to do things that they love to do. So coming back to the end, and I don't know whether there's any questions because I can't see the chat, but the safety culture or risk searching culture that I mentioned earlier, I'm not bothered what you want to call it. But if you want to reduce your number of accidents, then you need to help people see risk and see risk and then be able to do something about it, okay? The visible felt leadership, and it's not just visible leadership, it's the way that leadership is felt, is vital. You need a program that somehow drives the felt leadership, and it's not signing a document, okay? It is not signing a document like, this is the safety policy, I'm committed, or doing a fancy video. It's the way it's felt on the shop floor. Employee involvement and engagement is part of our strategy within L'Oreal and my previous organizations. My strategy includes something for developing employee involvement and engagement. I don't leave it to chance. Governance. Governance is vital. governance is vital to make sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do. And trust me, if you put something out there and then you don't have an audit system or you're not visiting your sites, they will deviate. It's human nature. It's not their fault. It's not because they want to get injured. It's just human nature. And we need to help with governance to bring them back online. And governance can be a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily need to be audits. And then beyond the gate, create a sense of purpose. Now, I'm going to cheat now, because I'm not going to give you 5 things. I'm going to give you 6 things. And the other thing that's important that I found out through all of the companies where I've worked, you have to talk the business language. The days are gone when it's, oh, we have to do our risk assessments, we have to do this, we have to do that. I found I've had more success within the organizations where I've worked when I've wanted to be a business partner and I've aligned to add value, visible value to the business, a positive contribution. And that, like at the moment within L'Oreal, we're doing through our external women in safety programs, whereby we're partnering with Nike as well as ROSPA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, put 100 women through leadership training, and then each one of them individually gets 12 months mentoring, and they don't pay a penny, right? But that aligns with what L'Oreal sees as being part of its values and what it wants to do. So I've aligned, and we're doing good as a result. So it's important that be a business partner as well. You know, be savvy, understand about leadership, understand about what drives people, and how we're wired inside.